One thing that has puzzled historians for many years is the love life and relationships that the Führer of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, had. We know for certain that inside of his bunker, in the final days of the Second World War, in Berlin, the heart of his Third Reich, as it was crumbling, that Adolf Hitler married his longtime girlfriend Eva Braun. It's not known why specifically Hitler did this. It was clear that within a matter of hours that his life would come to an end, and he knew that Eva Braun would also follow him. He may have believed at one point that Eva would still get out of Berlin, and that she would get a large pension being looked after for the rest of her life if she did escape, but this never did occur. Much of Hitler's relationship with Eva Braun is documented by those inside of the inner circle and the high-ranking Nazis who wrote about it. But what is not as well known is that Adolf Hitler had relations, allegedly throughout his life, with many other women. Some claimed that they slept with the Führer, and others were completely besotted with the man who became the dictator of Nazi Germany. But who were the women who allegedly slept with Hitler, had a relationship with him, or simply who fell in love with him? To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. There were many rumours throughout the decades after the war about Hitler and the relationships he had with a number of women throughout his life. Some have even tried to claim that he may have had some relations with men, but there is no documentary evidence about this. His name was linked to a number of female lovers, and some of these women ended their lives or tried to do so to gain Hitler's attention. An alarming number of women who were linked romantically to Hitler did die or become injured in brutal circumstances, but the Führer liked to give the image to the German people that he was a celibate man who was devoted entirely to governing the Nazi Reich, and he did not want to give the impression that he would be distracted by women. What we will do now is one by one analyse the different women who were suspected of possibly having relations or a relationship with the Führer. Stefanie Rabatsch was an Austrian woman who it was claimed was the unrequited love of the teenage Adolf Hitler. It is normal that as a teenager he learned about females and wanted to spend time with them. It has been alleged that Hitler fell in love with her after she passed by him on her daily stroll in Linz with her mother, as the young Stefanie looked at him briefly. Hitler never spoke to her, and she would later marry an Austrian army officer. Hitler kept delaying that he would speak to Stefanie, saying that he would do so tomorrow, but tomorrow would never come. Some have alleged that he may have even stalked the young girl, and Hitler's childhood friend, August Kubisek, claimed that he would deliver reports on what the young girl was doing. It was described by Kubisek that, "Never again did I see Adolf as happy as he was at that moment. When the carriage had passed him, he dragged me aside, and with emotion he gazed at the flower, this visible pledge of her love. I can still hear his voice trembling with excitement. She loves me." After Hitler's mother's death, the funeral procession went through local villages, and Kubisek claimed that Hitler had seen Stefanie at the procession, and he said that Stefanie had no idea how deeply Adolf was in love with her. She regarded him as somewhat shy, but nevertheless remarkably tenacious and a faithful admirer. When she responded with a smile to his inquiring glance, he was happy, and his mood became unlike anything I had ever observed in him. But when Stefanie, as happened just as often, coldly ignored his gaze, he was crushed and ready to destroy himself and the whole world. Shockingly, Kubisek, Hitler's childhood friend, claimed that Hitler planned to actually one day kidnap Stefanie and kill her, and he would then jump off a bridge himself, but instead he moved to Vienna. Stefanie later was interviewed and asked about the claims about Hitler loving her, and she said that she did not realise what had happened. She did recall, though, that Hitler had once spoken to her, and she said, "I once received a letter from someone who said they were to attend the Academy of Arts, and that I should wait for him. He could come back and marry me. I had no idea who this letter might have been from, or who I should have sent it to." Stefanie Rabatsch died on the 22nd of December 1975, aged 87. It is regarded that the accounts were factual and that Hitler did fall in love with her at a young age. Another woman who was claimed to have been an alleged lover of Adolf Hitler was Charlotte Lovejoy. These claims are a little more out there, as Charlotte's son, Jean-Marie Laurette, claimed he was the illegitimate son of Adolf Hitler, and he said he'd been conceived during the First World War. Jean-Marie's mother told him that his father was an unknown German soldier. Charlotte was a dancer, and it is known that Hitler, according to eyewitnesses, had a relationship during World War I with a woman named Charlotte. Jean-Marie Laurette would later enter the French army and fought during World War II, actually against Hitler's armies, and he later claimed that his mother told him before her death in 1948 that his father was in fact Adolf Hitler. But there could be more to this than speculation. Heinz Linger, Hitler's valet, would later state that Hitler told people that he had ties to a French village from the First World War. Linger was allegedly in the same room as head of the SS Heinrich Himmler when Hitler called Himmler, and Himmler was ordered to find someone in that village, and Linger overheard discussion involving a woman and her son. Linger believed Jean-Marie Laurette's claims that he was the illegitimate son of the Führer. Allegedly, despite not speaking the same language, Hitler and Charlotte went on walks and drank at night, and it was claimed that Laurette was conceived after a drunken evening between Charlotte and Hitler. Charlotte Lovejoy claimed that, when your father was around, which he was rarely, he liked to take me for walks in the countryside, but these walks ended usually very badly. In fact, your father, inspired by nature, launched into speeches which I did not really understand. That sounds like Hitler. He did not speak French, but solely ranted in German, talking to an imaginary audience. Even if I spoke German, I would not be able to follow him, as the histories of Prussia, Austria, and Bavaria were not familiar to me at all, far from it. My reaction used to anger your father so much that I did not show any reaction at all. There are some inconsistencies in the story of Hitler's alleged illegitimate son, but one thing that has recently been discovered is that Jean-Marie Laurette, the love child allegedly, has the same blood group as Hitler, and they do have rather suspiciously similar handwriting. Some have even suggested that the family could technically claim royalties from the sale of Mein Kampf. Jean-Marie Laurette died in 1985, and his mother Charlotte died in 1951 at the age of 53. Erna Hanfstaengl was the sister of one of Hitler's closest friends. It has been rumoured that Hitler and Erna were romantically involved. She was said to have been beautiful and charming, and also very intelligent, and some have claimed that whilst Hitler was hiding out in the Hanfstaengl home following the Munich Putsch, that they engaged in a physical relationship. Rumours were even printed about the pair, and that they were to be engaged, and it is possible that Erna was just polite and courteous to Hitler, her brother's close friend, and that this may have been misinterpreted as affection by the Führer. Later, Erna was allegedly involved in a plot to overthrow Hitler and to then sue for peace with the Allies. Her peace plan involved having Himmler, the head of the SS, and other SS men abduct Hitler and hold him inside of an SS prison. She even had meetings in Paris involving this plot, but nothing came of it. One of two women most commonly linked to the Führer was his half-niece Geli Raubal. She was the daughter of Hitler's half-sister, Angela Raubal, and it is known that she and Hitler did have a relationship which many at the time, and still now, would consider very immoral. Her mother was Hitler's housekeeper, and Hitler was 19 years older than the young Geli. Her mother worked inside of the Berghof, and Geli Raubal moved actually into Hitler's Munich apartment. Hitler described Geli as having an unusual beauty, and he kept a very close eye on her, and the exact nature of their relationship isn't entirely concrete. It is considered that they had a physical relationship, and Hitler was infatuated with his half-niece in a romantic way, and she would have returned some of his affection. She actually lived alone with Hitler in his Munich apartment, and the relationship was filled with jealousy, as Hitler was intensely jealous of the fact Geli flirted with many men, and Geli was jealous of the fact Hitler's eye was being turned towards another young woman named Eva Braun. Hitler was overtly possessive of his half-niece, and he controlled who she could see and who she could not. He found out that she was actually seeing his chauffeur, Emil Maurice, and he fired Maurice and went ballistic at her. The possessiveness displayed by Hitler may have been what led to the death of Geli Raubal. They argued constantly, and Hitler refused to allow her to go to Vienna and to marry a man whom she had struck up a relationship with. As Hitler departed for a meeting in Nuremberg on the 18th of September 1931, he was informed and told to head back to Munich, as it was reported that Geli Raubal, his half-niece, was dead. She had shot herself in the lung with Hitler's Walther pistol inside of his Munich apartment. What happened next was a closed Nazi meeting, and they considered how to best deal with Geli Raubal's death and how to cover up the relationship and the story of Hitler's half-niece and lover, and how she'd killed herself inside of Hitler's own apartment with his gun. Hitler was truly devastated by Geli Raubal's death and was plunged into a deep depression, and he even refused to attend her funeral in Vienna, later visiting her grave 2 days later. Hitler would later, according to American historian William L. Shirer, state that Geli Raubal was the only woman that Hitler loved, and he hung portraits of her in his state rooms inside the Reich Chancellery in Berlin once he had taken power. Maria Reiter was also linked to Adolf Hitler romantically. According to her account, she was 16 years old when the 37-year-old Hitler began to groom her, and he asked her out. He allegedly made unwanted physical advances towards her, which she did reject, but she did kiss him to hopefully get him to leave her alone. Reiter and Hitler allegedly went on a number of dates, and according to an article, Hitler had informed her that he wanted her to be his wife and to have children with her. Hitler told Maria Reiter that he wanted to also live with her and told her to wait for him. She allegedly tried to take her own life, despairing as Hitler left to take over matters politically, and Reiter would then marry a local hotel keeper instead. In 1931 she left her husband, and after a visit from Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess, Maria was informed that Hitler was still interested in her, and Maria went to Munich to spend a night with Hitler. She claimed, "I let everything happen. I have never been as happy as I was that night," leaving very little to the morbid imagination. Hitler wanted allegedly for her to remain in Munich as his lover, but Maria wanted marriage, and Hitler did not want this. He even ordered Hans Frank, his personal lawyer, to handle Reiter's divorce and to get her a good deal. But after Hitler had risen to power, Reiter once again saw Hitler, and he asked her again to become his lover, and she refused. He said he could not marry or have children, as he had been given a mission to oversee the Reich. The last time they met was in 1938, and she had years earlier married SS Hauptsturmführer George Kubitsch. After his death during the Battle of Dunkirk in 1940, Hitler sent Maria Reiter 100 red roses. Hitler's own sister Paula would later state that Maria was the only woman who could level the Führer and bring down his destructive side. They continued to write affectionate letters to each other also during the war, and Maria died in Munich at the age of 80 in 1992. Winifred Wagner was the granddaughter of Richard Wagner, the famous composer that Hitler loved. In 1923 she met the Führer for the first time, who admired Wagner's music. Wagner sent Hitler food parcels and even stationery following his imprisonment after the Munich Putsch, and on some of this paper, Mein Kampf could well have been written. Winifred Wagner remained faithful to Hitler, but claimed she did not support the Nazis, but in 1933 their relationship was so close that some thought they were about to marry. The Wagner household would become Hitler's favourite home, and he did stay there without any bodyguards, feeling safe, and he even gave the Wagner family tax exemption. But Winifred Wagner allegedly was appalled by what Hitler would bring to Germany with the suffering and persecution, and she would later never say that she regretted meeting Hitler, and claimed that she would actually still welcome him through the door if he came around, even after the Second World War. Unity Mitford was a member of the British socialite Mitford family, and she is best known for her support of Nazism and the Führer. She was a girl who craved attention, and her sister was the wife of the British Union of Fascist leader Oswald Mosley. Unity may have wanted to one-up her sister by going after the Führer of Nazi Germany, and she even as a teenager decorated her room with swastikas and pictures of Hitler. But she would attend a Nuremberg rally for the first time in 1933, and she claimed about Hitler that, "The first time I saw him, I knew there was no one I would rather meet." She would go back to Germany and enroll in a language school in Munich, and it's believed that Unity tried to stalk Hitler and desperately tried to meet him. It has been claimed about this that she set her mind on getting Hitler, and she discovered his movements could be ascertained. It's one of the extraordinary things about Hitler's daily life that he was so available to the public. You knew which cafe he'd be in, you knew which restaurant he'd be in, which hotel, and he would just go and meet people over sticky buns and cakes, and it was possible to meet him like that. And he was in the habit of eating in the Osteria Bavaria in Munich, and she started sitting in the Osteria Bavaria every day. So he would have come into the front part of the restaurant where there was this English girl. After 10 months of doing exactly the same thing, Hitler invited Unity Mitford to his table and they talked. She described this as the most wonderful and beautiful day of my life. I am so happy that I wouldn't mind a bit dying. I'd suppose I am the luckiest girl in the world. For me, he is the greatest man of all time. Hitler also became smitten with her, and he was struck by her middle name, Valkyrie. The pair grew close, and he played her off with Eva Braun, making Braun jealous. Eva later wrote of this that she is known as a Valkyrie and looks the part, including her legs. I, the mistress of the greatest man in Germany and the whole world, I sit here waiting whilst the sun mocks me through the window panes. Unity Mitford even made a number of public speeches for the Nazis, which were virulently anti-Semitic. This caused chaos back home in Britain, and she was given the coveted golden swastika badge by Hitler. She was a member of the inner circle, and grew very close to Hitler, and some described her as more of a Nazi than the actual Nazis. But others were suspicious of Unity Mitford, and considered she may have been a British spy. But as the British would declare war on the Germans, Unity was warned that she should return home for her safety. On the 3rd of September 1939, she visited a local Nazi Gauleiter, and she then, in the English garden in Munich, pulled out a pearl-handled pistol that Hitler had gifted her, and she shot herself in the head. She was sent back to Britain, and was very close to death. It was said of this, "We were not prepared for what we found. The person lying in bed was desperately ill. She had lost 2 stone, was all huge eyes and matted hair, untouched since the bullet went through her skull. The bullet was still in her head, inoperable, the doctor said. She could not walk, talked with difficulty, and was a changed personality, like one who had had a stroke. Not only was her appearance shocking, she was a stranger, someone we did not know. We brought her back to England in an ambulance coach attached to a train. Every jolt was agony to her. She did recover slightly, and it was too dangerous to remove the bullet from her head, but it was claimed that her mental age was that of a 10-year-old. She later had an affair with an RAF pilot, but died on the 28th of May 1948, caused by meningitis, which may have been linked to the swelling on the brain of Unity Mitford because of the bullet. Eva Braun, or Eva Hitler, as she would be known for roughly 40 hours, succeeded to Hitler's affections after the death of Hitler's niece, Geli Raubal. She was played off by Hitler against other women such as Unity Mitford, and Eva Braun, to attract Hitler's attention, would even attempt to take her own life, shooting herself in the chest. This did the job, and Hitler became more committed to her, and by the end of 1932, they had become lovers. Braun worked as a photographer for Heinrich Hoffmann, Hitler's own photographer, and the pair spent a lot of time together. As Hitler's influence over Germany increased, Eva would be a constant inside of the Berghof, his mountain retreat, but to the German public she was not known about at all, and remained in the shadows. In fact, at the end of the Second World War, when the German people were told that their Führer was married to his long-time girlfriend, they had no idea that he even had a girlfriend. Eva Braun continued to work for Heinrich Hoffmann after the relationship had begun, and she took many films inside of the inner circle. She would also become a secretary to Hitler, and she would also enter and leave the Reich Chancellery when she wanted through private entrances. It's believed that the pair had a normal physical relationship, but during one afternoon, Eva giggled over a photograph of British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain sat on a sofa in Hitler's Munich flat, and she said, if only he knew what goings-on that sofa had seen. Later in the war, her sister would marry a senior SS commander, Hermann Fegelein, who served as Heinrich Himmler's personal liaison to the Führer. Hitler then used this to allow Eva Braun to take more of a frontline role at meetings, and she would be with Hitler and be introduced as Fegeline's sister-in-law. In the final days of the war, inside of the Führer bunker, Fegeline was shot within the Reich Chancellery garden, and Braun had allegedly appealed to Hitler not to do this. Of course, inside of the bunker, on the 30th of April 1945, Eva Braun allegedly died, sat by her then husband Adolf Hitler, as he also took his life as the Second World War had come to an end. These women are those who were linked to Adolf Hitler, and they all allegedly had some form of friendship, which was very strong, or a relationship with Hitler. He may have tried to marry some of them, or may have been infatuated with them. But only one woman, Eva Braun, would marry the Führer for roughly 40 hours. All of the women suffered with their lives after meeting with Hitler, and he would change their lives for the worse. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.